A year ago, Brigitte Adesine was struggling to live on less than $2 a day. Now she's financed her first real estate development.
I'm happy, and if I had a drum, I would dance.
How did she do it? Brigitte's success story begins here, in the rice fields of Benin in West Africa. For decades, poor rice farmers couldn't compete with cheap imported varieties. But then last year, the price of imported rice skyrocketed, and the government declared a food emergency. Calling on development partners like the UN's International Fund for Agricultural Development to help boost local rice production quickly. A decision that would give Brigitte and hundreds of poor farmers the break they were hoping for.
The global food crisis isn't necessarily a death sentence. It could actually be a great economic opportunity.
Farmers were encouraged to grow a breed of rice called Nerica, a cross between African and Asian varieties that matures fast, is more pest-resistant, and doesn't require as much water. For Brigitte, what mattered most was the yield. With just 1 hectare of Nerica, Brigitte increased her harvest from 1.5 to 6.5 tons of rice.
Before, I earned just a little money farming, but now with Nerica, I earn a lot more, and I'm investing in my future.
A future that has included buying land to grow peanuts, soy, and corn, which she stores and then resells at an even bigger profit when prices are higher. When added together, Brigitte says she earned 1,200,000 francs CFA, or about $2,000 profit in just one cropping season.
People are impressed. They see all the money I'm making and that I'm reinvesting in other businesses, and they want to do the same.
Brigitte's move into real estate development is her biggest venture yet. Once construction is finished, she figures she'll earn enough in rent to pay off her initial investment in just 2 years. All this because rice became too expensive to import. Nerica developers say with continued support, African farmers could grow enough rice to satisfy all local consumption, while giving hundreds of poor farmers like Brigitte an opportunity to change their lives.
This is an unusual story of how a country is recovering from war. Landlocked, densely populated, no resources, Burundi, one of the world's poorest countries, is still reeling from a 15-year-long civil war. But here, a small push in the right direction can go a long way in changing people's lives. And change came in the shape of a cow. 5 years ago, Firmin and his family received a calf, sponsored by the IFAD, a UN agency that funds development projects for small farmers. As his calf grew, his family enjoyed the benefits of a healthier diet. But the calf was not just a gift, it was the beginning of a chain of solidarity.
A chain of solidarity is a self-revolving system of credit. The person that receives a calf is obliged to return its first offspring to the community.
Firmin duly gave the first calf to the local community committee, who would decide who would be the next beneficiary. They settled on Marie-Thérèse, who welcomed the calf as it helped to supplement the meagre income she earned from her bean crop. The chain kept evolving. Marie-Thérèse's cow eventually gave birth to a male calf, and the local committee decided that it should be passed on to Félicien, one of the thousands widowed by the war.
Before the war, my husband used to take care of our needs. The war took away my husband. There are many widows and orphans that can barely get by.
Félicien decided to sell the calf and buy an Ankole cow, a hardy local breed that needs less care than other cows.
Since I received this cow, I can fertilize my lands and produce more food. So life is starting to get better.
Traditionally, a cow has stood for the wealth of a family. If you have a cow, you are considered a rich person. It's also a symbol of a strong bond between two families. If a family gives another a cow, they become united, like brothers.
Thanks to his cow, Fermin is now one of the wealthiest members of his community.
My cow has allowed me to build a brick house, to install electricity in my home. By selling the milk, I started saving, and now I've almost $1,500 in the bank. So I'm setting up a shop in town.
When his cow had another calf, he went into partnership with his neighbour Claver, and now they both benefit from a project that started with 600 cows and which has reached out to over 10,000 households around the country. Now entire communities gather to witness each new link in the chain of solidarity. In this war-torn country, fighting poverty means helping peace. East Coast fever, the age-old nightmare of herders in East Africa, is a cattle disease similar to malaria in humans. East Coast fever can wipe out the bulk of an entire herd in as little as 3 weeks. Each year, hundreds of millions of dollars are lost to the disease. The culprit, a parasite transmitted by a tick. Most people would cringe at the sight of the blood-sucking ticks, but Esther Kanduma, a Kenyan PhD student, is anything but squeamish. Ticks are her business. She studies their genetic diversity.
This involves collecting field ticks from different agroecological zones in Kenya. I would be traveling to areas where East Coast fever is a problem. And you drag a sheet of green pastures. Usually during the wet rainy season, there are lots of ticks, and then they would get stuck into the sheet. The preferred site of attachment in cattle is usually the ear of cattle.
Oli Kiret in the Kajiado district in southern Kenya. This is one of the hotspots of East Coast fever. Ture Oli Katipa, a Maasai elder who has 150 cows and 300 goats, says the disease has been the bane of his life.
For a long time, it's been such a big problem that if you had 50 cows, only 20 survived. We just found out that there's an infection and treatment method, and we've been using it.
Infection and treatment is a first-generation vaccine. To date, it's been very efficient in immunising the cattle. Only it's a costly process and not readily available in Kenya. Meanwhile, Esther's research is helping increase the understanding of the ticks. She works at Becker, Biosciences for Eastern and Central Africa, an institute funded mainly by the Canadian Development Agency and the Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture. Becker has become a hub for African scientists who research vaccines for livestock and crops that are resistant to drought and diseases. Seganet Kelemu, the director of Becker, says the facility will reduce the brain drain of African scientists to Europe or the US.
This is really a great time for science, for African science, because of the financial crisis globally, the climate change, drought, the food crisis. I think it made policymakers focus more maybe in agriculture and look for some new tools in improving agriculture. And many donors have focused also on boosting African scientists to work and find solution for their own problems, for their own regions and for their own people.
A country torn apart by a brutal 16-year-long civil war, by floods, by famine. A countryside peppered with unexploded landmines. Industries in ruins. This is Mozambique, one of the poorest countries in the world, but also a country rich in resources.
A factory like this one employed 1,000 people. It means a lot of people and families lost their jobs when these industries collapsed. And as with fishing, we're in a position of free access. Fishing became an alternative solution.
Mozambique has some of the best and varied catch in the world, and many people fled the war-torn provinces to take refuge on the coast. On this beach, 12,000 people depend on fishing, but this is a dwindling resource. For Paulino Cincano, the community's leader, the main problem came from the industrial fishing fleets.
Before, when the fishermen went out there, they found the industrial boats which tore their nets, destroyed them, and we couldn't resolve this problem.
Things have changed since IFAD, a UN agency that funds development projects, helped the villagers set up a community cooperative, which put pressure on the government to broker agreements with the industrial boats.
There's a division now. We have fishing zones. For instance, the small-scale fishermen can fish up to 3 miles out in the sea. From 3 miles onwards, it's industrial fishing territory. So we've solved the problem.
Fishing projects usually focus on increasing the catch, but this project's approach has been different. Their motto is, if you take care of the fishermen, then they will take care of the fish. And so not only have they opened a hospital and a school, but the fishermen were provided with powerful motorboats. A local store selling better equipment was opened. An ice factory was created to conserve the fish and transport the catch to the big city. The fishermen now catch high-quality fish, which they can sell for a better price. Life has definitely improved.
Nobody likes to live in poverty. When life becomes better for these people, I, as a fisherman's son, and as a native of the coast, I become really enthusiastic. I'm satisfied.
Yakuba Sawadogo is a farmer in Burkina Faso. His passion is his forest. He dreams, lives, swears by it.
I started 20 to 23 years ago when there was a big famine in Burkina Faso. It spread as far as Mali. It didn't rain at all, and people started fleeing. I was working in the market, and I was contemplating running away too. I then thought that I wasn't any better than those people who were leaving. I was a shopkeeper, but I stopped working. At the time, I could make between 700,000 and 800,000 CFA a day.
For the next 3 years, Yakuba stopped working and thought of a way to make a living from the land. He then started to use a traditional technique called zai to rehabilitate degraded land. Zai had always been used by farmers in Burkina Faso, but Yakuba improved the system by digging deeper and in the direction of the water flow. In the beginning, his aim was to produce more cereals, but he saw that numerous tree species were growing spontaneously on his land. He protected the trees, and within a few years the barren land was transformed into a 12-hectare forest. He now studies the medicinal properties of the trees.
When I come here, I keep telling myself I have to leave. But midday comes and I'm still here. I'm so taken, so excited about it all, that I can't leave. I see so many extraordinary things here.
Yakuba's technique has spread far and wide. A few hundred kilometres away in neighbouring Niger, a group of widows have changed their lives by using his system of zais, which they call tassas. They've transformed 2,000 hectares of barren, abandoned land into productive fields.
We were trained 16 years ago. We laid out the land and moved tons of rocks to achieve this. When the work was finished, the land was distributed. Every woman was given a patch of land, and it belonged to her. We learned to make tassas and to use dung. We were told that we have to dig the land in relation to the water flow. The earth pile in the hole diverts the water into the pit. As soon as the millet grows, it develops well and quickly. We have little weeding to do, so it's less tiring.